I am resident of Collinwood for YouTube, joined by Patrick McCray. How are you, man?
I'm great.
We're here to discuss Star Trek Deep Space Nine. And this stars Avery Brooks. You have Renee DeJour as Odo.
Uh, Auberginois.
Or Bergeron, sorry.
There you
Um,
go.
and Star Trek was obviously created by Gene Roddenberry. Do you think, when you think of creators, does it go Roddenberry, Curtis, um, Twilight Zone,
Yeah. Rod Serling.
Rod Serling? What order does it go for you?
What's the criteria that we're stacking them in? Ones
Really,
like, or ones that have had lasting impact on culture, or ones who were actively involved in their own creation,
we'll
or
go. I think really we'll go in not just actively involved, but influential. Not just in the involvement, but really in in just how creative they were with their television product.
franchise. That's a dangerous question. Um, because with Dan Curtis, he was not really a writer, so that's not a salient really thing. Um, I mean, he had a dream that he had Art Wallace, who was involved in Star Trek, also develop, and so yeah, Gene Roddenberry. Before we talk about Gene, let's talk about Rod Serling. Uh, if we consider the Twilight Zone a franchise,
Right.
certainly Serling was one of the two most boots on the ground influential figures there was.
Right.
He wrote a lot of episodes, and that was very much his stamp. He introduced them, all of that. But there's not a cohesive plot or universe that's in that. I would say that then we come to Gene, and Gene's a kind of a challenging figure to talk about because um, uh, Gene had some really good ideas. Generally, if you look at the episodes of the show that he wrote or that he pushed forward, they are not the finest hours of the series. And if you look at a lot of the major pieces of Star Trek original series mythology, they were created by Dorothy Fontana and Gene Kuhn.
Mm.
So, Gene, I'm a big, big, big Gene Roddenberry fan. I am more a fan of his speeches, more a fan of what he said about Star Trek, than necessarily his work on Star Trek. Although I will say he was a tremendous rewriter. He rewrote a lot of the scripts on the early years of Next Generation and certainly on the original series. And so they did have a consistency in that regard. It's interesting because we're on a Deep Space Nine discussion. And that was a show where, you had Ira Stephen Bear, who had a very distinct vision, and Ron Moore also. And I can never really tell who was in charge more on that. I don't know. And then Rick Berman, who theoretically was the showrunner or the executive producer. But when you start to look at the making of stuff, it seems like every good idea that they had to do despite Rick Berman rather than because of it. The continuity,
Right.
the big Dominion War, the Defiant. All of this they had to push past Berman, who didn't want to do any of it. So really, in terms of major showrunners, and this brings us to a massive Deep Space Nine question, the one who really, really, really put his money where his mouth was is J. Michael Straczynski, the creator of Babylon 5, the great rival of Deep Space Nine's. And Joe was so dedicated to his personal stamp that he wrote at least one entire season, if not 2 or 3 entire seasons, completely alone. These are 24 episode seasons, and with the executive producer on the show. So that's a showrunner.
Right. Well, they are 24 episodes now, depending on the streaming service you watch them on. Because if you watch it on Netflix, right, it's 24 episodes. But if you watch it on Paramount Plus, sometimes you'll get like sometimes you'll get like an extra episode. Like they'll put an episode extra in for whatever reason.
They removed an episode recently.
Really?
And then put it right back. They removed Duet.
Oh,
because God. I don't know if it had to do with Ukraine or what, but they thought it was, they lied, but it seemed like it was politically dicey or something. And Ira Stephen Bear raised hell, I think, or at least made note of it on YouTube or on Twitter. And then it mysteriously made its way back. Paramount Plus claimed technical difficulties or something, but.
It's weird. I watched half of the series on Netflix, and I watched half of it on Paramount Plus. So that's probably why I didn't know.
Well, this was recent. This was just in the past few weeks.
Okay. So we start off. Avery Brooks stars in Star Trek Deep Space Nine. He plays Commander Benjamin Cisco. He does become captain in this series, but you find out that he lost his wife during a battle that involved the Borg. And it's real. You also find out he has a son named Jake Cisco. What did you think of him?
At what point?
At the beginning. The beginning, sorry.
Both overly hostile.
Yeah.
Little bland. They were trying too hard to give him an edge.
Yeah.
That just made him seem grumpy. And it's like, God, do I really want to kick it with this guy one day a week? I don't know. I felt obligated to like him because Avery Brooks is a great actor.
Yeah.
And as he famously says, I'm not Picard.
Yeah.
In a great moment, but it didn't seem like the writers really knew what to do with him. I mean, let's face it, other than Picard, who had it all to himself and had 20 years of percolating to emerge from, Cisco really is the first competing new captain that Star Trek had. The first new lead role that Star Trek. I thought, well, what is this guy going to be like? And I think other than making him real angry and real sad, I'm not sure they entirely knew what to do with him. And then there's the Cisco bald rule, which if Cisco is bald, it's a good episode.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a corollary, by the way, with the Odo collar rule. If Odo has a collar, chances are it's going to be a good episode. Yeah. If Cisco's bald, then by definition, Odo has a collar, and it's always going to be a good episode. And if Worf is running around, it's going to be a fantastic episode.
Yeah, I actually really liked Michael Dorn coming on to Deep Space Nine. It didn't feel forced either. It just felt natural.
Yeah.
And I like that he gets a relationship with Dax. Now, Terry Farrell, the girl who plays Dax, she's going to end up leaving the show. I don't know exactly why, but
she wound up with Becker pretty soon. So it's funny because we have this great investment in these characters,
right?
But and the actors, certainly when they want to appear at conventions and appeal to fans, suddenly have a great investment in these characters. But I'll tell you something. There was a wonderfully horrible, cynical quote that I heard at Babylon 5, which was, theater is art television is furniture.
Yeah.
And that could mean that it is a piece of furniture, because television just be these big cabinets that would be in the room, and you'd actually get them at furniture stores. Or it meant that television's the ability for the people who make it to go buy furniture for themselves, but television's furniture. And my personal opinion is that, you know, there was probably a better business offer on the table.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's what happened.
Yeah. I really like when you're introduced to Cisco, and because it's not the same way you're introduced to Picard. You're right. Picard for a long time was, from a television standpoint, an unchallenged captain. He was the captain.
Captain.
Right. Yeah, he was it. But I don't, you know, I take nothing away from Patrick Stewart. I love Patrick Stewart. Terrific actor.
Mm-hmm.
But I love Avery Brooks's Cisco. It really, and I wasn't a father at the time when I watched this. I was a kid when I watched Deep Space Nine. I was, you know, I don't know, I really loved Avery Brooks's emotional backstory they gave him. I don't feel that it was forced or anything. And I love how he's just walking along. He's talking to this woman. You learn, well, that's how he met his wife, and walked along the beach. And then when you see him talking to his son, they're sitting on a dock, and it felt, you know, really real. It felt like a great emotional connection between they felt like a father and son. It didn't feel like two actors.
Let me say, you picked up on preliminary kind of vibes that they were putting out very successfully, that I think they built on brilliant. I would, you know, that's why I asked you, when do you want me to talk about, you know, at what point do you want me to talk about my relationship with Cisco? Because by the third season, he's really, really getting to do some fantastic stuff. By the fourth season, he absolutely owns the character and owns what's going on. And yeah, he's my favorite captain.
Yeah, sorry I didn't clarify that, but for me, where I'm starting it to be another reason I start at the beginning with this is, once he gets to Deep Space Nine, he's also, you know, when he goes to the wormhole, the prophets choose this guy to represent Bajor and them. To it's like, holy crap, this dude's now a religious figure. So he not only has to run a space station, he has a son, and he's now a religious figure. They put a lot of when I look at responsible captains, my top of the list is Cisco, because he had a lot of responsibility.
He did. And so do you. Keep talking. I'm going to be right here. My camera may cut out for a moment.
Okay.
Like Radio Crack listening.
Okay. So once he gets there and you find out that he's this religious figure now because the prophets choose him, and you meet Kara Nerys, you meet Odo, you meet these you know, Quark we've known from the movies and Star Trek The Next Generation. Also Cole Meany's character, you meet him in The Next Generation too. So you get two characters who are coming over from the original series, along with new characters like Dax and Odo, who you're meeting for the first time, and Kara Nerys. So they put together really sound characters to surround him with, which I think helps Avery Brooks.
Yeah.
But it doesn't take away from him either, you know.
No, it never takes away from a lead to surround them with a very strong ensemble. It only, because he's the one running them, so it makes him look more commanding and impressive.
Yep. And I really like the fact that early on in the early seasons, this is before they get too deep into it, they try to set up a school. Cole Meany's character his wife tries to set up, Keiko tries to teach a school, and the school gets bombed, and you find out that this other woman, Kai Wen had something to do with it or was involved, and even Kara suspects that she was involved.
Mm-hmm.
And basically what she's trying to do is shut down the school and divide the space station in many ways, because it's a Bajoran space station, for those who don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And here's Cisco, and I love Avery Brooks' design. He goes, I see what you're doing. You think you're going to divide us. You don't know how much heart, and he makes it publicly in front of everybody, in front of the whole space station, that Bajorans and the Enterprise have worked together. And he's right. By this time, they have worked together. They have built this space station the way it is, running it the way they have been. And you feel when Avery Brooks speaks as Cisco, you really listen.
Sure.
What did you think?
There's no such thing as a Cisco speech that you don't that is not iconic. Right. Recently, I found myself drafted into playing the Plant in Little Shop of Horrors, and I'm not a singer nor an actor, and I was immediately accused of Shatnerizing, which I said I wish, but in fact it was Avery Brooks who had sort of possessed me and was the one doing the talking.
I saw the video of it on Twitter and Facebook. It looked really good, man.
Thank you. But does this look inanimate to you, punk? There's a real the Cisco. He's got to break down every word, and then slam the last one. But he means it. The guy's a theater professor at Rutgers, for God's sake. He when they were choosing an actor to stand, head and shoulders with Patrick Stewart, they chose a good one. There are only two other actors I would have enjoyed seeing in the part. And one was up for the part and one wasn't. The one who was up for the part was James Earl Jones. And James Earl Jones is, maybe, one of the two or three finest actors in the English-speaking world. And I think Avery Brooks would be the first guy to tell you that. So that was a little, hearing that he was available and didn't get it is a little, but the other one is a radical choice and obviously politically somewhat problematic, but it's Charles Napier. Charles Napier was, did you see Rambo First Blood Part 2?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Do you remember the CIA guy?
Yeah, that was
Yeah, he's in the Good Old Boys. He's a really, 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 or he passed away. He was an amazing actor. Yeah. And it would have gotten Jack Palance to play his dad.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Anyway, but let's talk about reality.
I don't know. I didn't know that James Earl Jones was considered. That's cool.
Yeah.
An actor who I could have saw playing him at that time would have been Sam Jackson, but I think by that time he was already in movies.
Oh, barely. He was in. Okay, so he was in Goodfellas in 1990.
Yep.
This is 1992.
Yes.
93.
92.
No, it's
92.
The summer of 92, and so he hadn't even made Jurassic Park yet.
Mm-hmm.
So he was available, but a little obscure. I think Yvette Cotto might have been up for it. Yvette Cotto plays Parker in Alien, and is a marvelous actor. He was up for Picard also.
He also is in To Live and Let Die as well.
Sure. Was it Kananga? Is that the name of the character?
I believe so. He's also in I'm sure you've seen it, Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare.
I thought you were going to say Freddy Got Fingered. Movie. Live and Let Die. This is all I have to say. Your champagne. Your champagne.
with Star Trek, you see a lot of alien creatures, right? A lot of different, but we had never, to my knowledge, we had never seen a shapeshifter. And here you meet Odo, who is a shapeshifter.
We meet several.
Oh,
So, in the very first Star Trek episode that was aired, The Man Trap, it's Nancy Crater, the salt vampire, is able to appear to be all these different creatures, and then just a few months before, is her name Imani? Iman, the model in Star Trek, The Undiscovered Country, plays a cameloid that helps Kirk break out of jail. Kirk and McCoy break out of Repente, and then fights Kirk as Kirk. And he says, "I can't believe I kissed you." And she says, "It must have been your greatest fantasy, your greatest desire." And yeah.
What did you think of? They call them foundlings.
Founders.
Founders, sorry.
Yeah,
Founders.
Vicky went foundling. What if she were a shapeshifter?
Sure.
She turns into Betsy Durkin.
That was good. That was good. So, Renee, I'm sorry if I butchered his last name.
Okay,
Renee.
Now, O.
Oh.
Imagine Bear. He's a bear. He's the security chief.
Yeah.
Jen, because Jen.
Okay.
And Wa, because he can form a little ball. So Auberginois.
Auberginois. So
Yeah.
Renee Auberginois plays
Auberginois.
My bad English. What an actor. I mean, he really owns this role, and him and Amar, I can't think of his last name, but the guy who played Cork, really. Ehrman really are great together. I mean, it's just them two together are just iconic.
Yeah. I think they had both been on the LA theater scene for a while. If they hadn't worked with each other, they certainly knew of each other and so on. They're the same, I think, basic age band and the sort of sensibility and yeah, they just had immediate and marvelous chemistry.
I like how when Cisco gets aboard the ship, he's expecting an old friend, and you see this woman, Terry Farrell, get off, and he goes, "Hello, old man," and I'm like, "What?"
Yeah.
And you realize that she has a symbiote in her, like she was a man at one point in time, and it was shocking to me.
She's a man.
Right. But Terry Farrell plays Dax, or Curzon Dax as well.
Well, no, she played Zia Dax.
But the character, the symbiote, was Curzon Dax.
Yeah.
Who can go into a host's body, be put into a host's body, for those who don't know. And you find out that Terry Farrell's character Dax was rejected initially for the symbiote product by Curzon, which was shocking to me. What did you think?
That's in the episode Dax, I think. Yeah. I think that, from a storytelling mechanics point of view, it gives the writers the ability for Cisco maybe to have to do some forgiving and be the adult, for it not to be where they're getting along too well, because you want to have a little essence of friction, a little essence of conflict between any characters, because if you don't have it, it just becomes good times theater.
Yeah. I do love there is friction. You're right between them on that episode because when they switch it to a male body, and he says old man, but he says if you're the Curzon Dax I really knew, he said you know what you're doing's wrong, you know.
Yeah.
Like come on, like, and I love, like I said, when Avery Brooks speaks, you really listen because he really just sells his words and his body language. And you were saying that you picked up on, or sorry, that the character really came into your stride for season 3 and 4. So what
I
did you think?
writing just got more confident.
Right.
And when they let him shave his head, which I guess is at the end of the third season, the very end. No, he grows a beard at the end of the third season. He's bald at the beginning of the fourth. I think that basically is the writers and the producers saying, Avery, we trust you.
Yeah.
We're going to follow your lead.
Yeah, I think, they did a good job. By this time, he's already built up. He's already had the confrontation. By this time this happens, he's already had the confrontation with Kai Wynn about the space station. So he's already faced certain obstacles. So, why not trust the guy you cast to play the lead role? And I mean, he's done a hell of a job up until this point anyway. So I really like the fact that he lets, at first, all Odo and him and even Kara Nerys are sort of at odds with him at first. They don't get along right away. So there is, Odo's like, you don't trust me, like, you know, and even Kara Nerys, there's sort of him, they're button heads too. So I like the early episodes. There's early tension between these new characters who are just meeting each other for the first time.
Oh yeah, yeah. Kira doesn't want him to be there at all.
Yep.
Now, okay, so before we go down that road, I'm going to throw one more what if at you.
Sure.
How would the series have been? I'm being serious here. I'm not going to bring up Liberace or something. Although Andy Robinson played Liberace in a TV movie. How would you have felt if this had been a spinoff for Riker?
Again, seeing the series as is and rewatching it now, because
Sure.
here's the thing. The actor guest star, he poses as Riker, but you learn it's Riker's evil twin brother.
Sure.
In an episode. I just can't see it. I'm not knocking the actor, at all. But I can't see it being a spinoff for Riker.
Okay.
I like the fact that, and again, I'm not saying you can't have that, because again, if you're going to have,
because it didn't happen, the show's off the air, so we literally can't have it. It's okay, you can say it.
I'm not saying you couldn't have had something like that, but in the same sense, there's something about taking a character. Sorry, that's my phone. And bringing a character like a Cisco, laying the groundwork for him, because here's somebody you haven't met.
Yeah.
I'm going to plead guilty to something. I love characters who I use wrestling terminology a lot, so I'll apologize for that.
Like unitards? What is
Well, I always say, for familiar characters who we all love and know, for example, like Barnabas. Barnabas is already over, right? As a character, he's over so with a character like Riker, or better yet, established. Barnabas is established. So Riker on Star Trek The Next Generation is an established character by this point in time, by the time Deep Space Nine airs.
Yeah.
If you took an established character from The Next Generation and put them on Deep Space Nine and put them in command, I don't think that would have been a bad idea. But in the same sense, I already know a lot about Riker. How much more mystery can you get out of that character?
It's not necessarily mystery that you get out of the character. It's how does that character change and grow
Right.
in this new environment? And I think if, we pretend that they knew about the Dominion War and everything like that, I will make an argument that it would have been a masterstroke. And I'll tell you why. Okay, you wouldn't have had the Jake situation. I mean, I'm sure that, Riker's fathered many children across the alpha and beta quadrants, but I don't think he acknowledges them. And he might not even know they exist. So we can put his fatherhood out of it. So what you have is a situation where on Next Generation, it finally would have allowed them to take either Data or Worf and make them first officer for the last, season and a half of the show, which would have been awesome. What a change, and how that would have set up the movies. But beyond that, on the show, Riker is a character who always he really represents, because he's even more of the military guy in some ways than Picard. Picard has this, to the manner born quality, and he's a horse rider, and he's an archaeologist, and all this other stuff. And I think Riker likes to make omelets and plays the trombone.
Right.
So there is room there to develop this character. He's also a character who's refused command over and over and over again. He has refused it because, as far as he knew, the Enterprise was his home. But a starship's no home. It just keeps going other places. So there is something really appropriate to him being forced against his will to take over this space station, being dragged off the Enterprise, which he's bitter about. Right. Trying to find anything he can to get off that ship, get off that station. And then he finds out he's the prophet.
Yeah.
And religious figure. Now he's really stuck with it. And so you take that with Jonathan Frakes' sense of humor in a very dark environment, and then see where that goes. And I'm telling you, the will they or won't they spark between Jonathan Frakes and Nana Visitor as Major Kira would have been absolutely incendiary on television. So I'm not saying it would have been, it would have been better than Cisco or anything like that, but a really logical kind of way to bring, continue this thing and bring new characters in. Anyway, just a thought.
No, you make a great point, because Jonathan Frakes, who does guest star on an episode, there is that chemistry between him and Karen Reese.
Yeah, I mean, they have a role, as far as I remember.
Right. So I could have seen that. By the way, Jonathan Frakes, hell of a television director, by the way. Yes. So I love when he directs an episode of Picard.
Yeah, this season it's nice when anyone seems to have directed an episode of Picard, and that the show seems to be going anywhere. Anyway.
But so I really like the fact that, again, I'm always more of a new character guy. I love familiar characters. I love established characters, but I'm a sucker for a new character. If you give me a new character to go off of, especially a series, look at it this way. Star Trek, by this time, is an established television series, The Next Generation especially. Mm-hmm. And yes, the Starship, they mentioned this in Deep Space Nine, the Starship Enterprise being destroyed, and that's why Worf is there as well, too. So they could have used that for Frakes' character to be... Okay.
Well, no, you can't have him be the second banana twice.
Right.
At some point, Frakes' banana must stand alone.
No, I mean, like, if they were going to use Frakes' character as a main character, like if he was going to be the captain. I apologize.
Yeah, but it hadn't been destroyed yet.
Right.
When they did that show, I was there, man. I was in the trenches. I was in graduate school, and I was writing about that in fanzines.
I'm not worthy, sir.
Yeah.
Oh my god! But I really like the fact. What did you think of Cole Meany's character?
He suffers better and more than any character on television. They just keep that guy around to punish him emotionally and physically. You know, yeah, he's marvelous. I mean, he is the everyman taken to the nth degree. Title of the Next Generation episode, where an everyman character gets manipulated by a computer into super intelligence. Yeah, he's tremendous.
He gets mistaken for he gets mistaken for a crime he didn't commit. He gets put in prison and tortured.
The mind prison, yeah.
The mind.
Then he has to go undercover.
Yep.
And this guy, only to have to probably oversee what might be his execution. Then Smiley, or no, he's Smiley in the Mirror Universe. No, the Nick Tate character in the Underground.
Yeah. His wife gets possessed by a creature in the caves. I forget what it is, and he's literally getting barked around by this creature who's in his wife what to do, and like how far to take it. And once he gets his wife back, she tells him it was going to kill us both. It was going to kill you and me. And I think he had figured that out too.
Yeah. And then an uncomfortable trip with Kira when she's pregnant, and they're both ordered to go away to some like luxurious resort or something. I don't know, but that's
yeah. I love how he plays that too. He's like, you're pregnant with my child.
It's kind of okay.
And he didn't even touch her. He didn't even.
No, it's a little okay. We didn't think, at least, just a little, maybe just like the bathroom doors left open a tiny crack accidentally getting out of the shower, and I'm walking by. I was like, well, like that. That happens.
I love how they invite Kira to stay with them in their quarters, and you can sort of already tell. It's he walked in on her in the shower. I'm like, oh my god.
By accident.
By accident, right?
Yeah.
It's like Cole Meany's a hell. It's amazing we haven't really got more. When they end Deep Space Nine, he leaves obviously by the end. For those who don't know, Cole Meany's character ends up leaving to be an instructor or something to teach, I believe. I sort of wish we would have got a spinoff of his character. He was really interesting.
I agree. What would you have had happen on that?
I would. A lot of things, really. I think you could have had him not make it to the teaching job, and him ended up having to either get captured or bail himself out. And or if he does make it, he runs into obstacles with certain students. He has to literally teach, and there are people. I'm sure you're a teacher. I don't know if you've ever where there's students who just don't want to learn.
Yes.
Yeah. And he has to deal with that too. So I think that would have been really interesting to see from that standpoint, because we've never, we do get glimpses of the cadets in Star Trek, and we hear, and we in the new movie, in the J.J. Abrams movie, we do see Cadet School a bit, but I sort of do wish we would get a full story where someone's just starting Cadet School. You sort of somewhat get it with Rom's son.
Yeah,
Nog in the series, but I actually see Cadet School, see somebody walking into the day in, day out Star Trek Cadet School.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to see that environment.
Well, you know, numerous times they have tried a Starfleet Academy TV series or set of movies. So that's not a foreign idea at all. It's one of the things that I think got Roddenberry to come in and do Next Generation. They were kind of planning to do something like that, and multiple times. I think they were planning on doing that when Star Trek V didn't do that well at the box office, and they were trying to figure out what else they wanted to do with the franchise. And Harv Bennett had that idea, and it was going to be Kirk and Spock and McCoy meeting each other in their academy days, and which is exactly what J.J. Abrams later did.
Yep.
That went before the desk of someone at Paramount, and they went, no, it's the 25th anniversary. Let's just pretend that Star Trek V didn't happen, and we'll do Star Trek VI for the 25th anniversary, and it'll be good. And it was.
So Quark, who's from the Next Generation, we've also seen him in Star Trek movies as well. He comes aboard Deep Space Nine. He's running a bar, and you really get into the lore of his race, the Ferengis, and how they're all about the money.
Yeah, they finally figured out what to do with the Ferengi. I don't know if you know this, but the Ferengi were supposed to be the main scary badass villains of Next Generation.
I sort of got that hint when I first saw Quark. Like, it felt like he was supposed to be more of a heel.
Well, no, they had given that up by the time Quark came along. But when Next Generation, which was, 87 as opposed to 93, when Next Generation was being developed, 92, when Next Generation was being developed, they really intended the Ferengi to be, in fact, the Ferengi were supposed to be sort of crab-like creatures at first, and Picard talks about them eating their enemies, and they were going to be really awful. And then they designed these three little schlemiels, and they cast one of which was Armin Shimmerman, and another one was Ethan Phillips, who played Neelix, and they cast these guys, and it's a catastrophe in terms of having a scary villain. And so I don't think they had any idea what to do with the Ferengi. And this show is the first time that they could let them really be recurring, semi-lovable, comical versions of us. Yeah, I mean, they're us. They're the closest to us now as the series gets.
I love how they have all these rules, the rules of acquisition.
Sure.
And there's this, you meet Quark's brother, Rom. He has a son, Dog. He also has a cousin, and you also meet
Kayla on the moon.
You also meet the Grand Negus, who I forget the actor's name, who was in The Princess Bride, who played the guy who kidnapped the girl.
Noted playwright Wallace Shawn.
What's that?
He's a famous playwright also. His name is Wallace Shawn.
Okay. So, yeah, Wallace Shawn plays the Grand Negus, and I love how, like, he's all up in Quark's business. And, like, when he shows up, or they have someone else has that scepter in their hand and they're speaking on behalf of the Grand Negus, everyone just goes to their feet or just bows there. It's like, wow, that thing, the Grand Negus wields a lot of power. And they
mother ends up hooking up with him.
You're right. Quark's mother, for those who don't know, Patrick's right. Quark's mother ends up hooking up with the Grand Negus, and it turns out the Grand Negus has memory loss. He's developing memory problems.
Yeah.
And I love the episode where they're actually going to have a new Grand Negus, and because of the bad communication, Quark thinks it's him, even though he called him Rom. But he did that in an earlier episode too, so he figures he's just mistaken his name again. And when everyone thinks that Quark's going to be the Grand Negus, you have his cousin like scrubbing his toes, and when the Grand Negus gets there, they give it to Rom. Rom's the new Grand Negus.
Yeah, a standard rom-com plot.
What did you think? They get Michael Dorn to come on as Worf. What did you think of that?
I thought it was great. I think it was, there's no such thing as too much Michael Dorn. There's no such thing as too much Worf. To take the crappiest, most war-torn, most tense part of the Star Trek universe and put the angriest hero you have in the middle of it. It's almost like they created a universe in Deep Space Nine, because by that point they'd introduced the Jem'Hadar and everything else. They had created a universe that was so big, potentially Cisco couldn't lift it. You know, I don't think God create a hairdo so large he himself couldn't hold his head up if he had it on it. And so I think, yes, to bring in this character, normally when you have a show and you have a main character who's getting a little too powerful, big in their britches, or the britches are too big or something, I don't know, something like that. You bring in really horrendous villains. You bring in a Nicholas Blair or Count Patofi to cut them down to size and really challenge them. In this case, they had created villains who might have been too vast for the situation. And so the writers said, oh, yeah, Founders, you think you're so tough? We're going to throw Worf at you. Let's see how you handle that. Yeah.
And I love what they do here, too. They don't, when they bring Michael Dorn in, they don't waste his time either. They actually get into, the Klingons and their pride and their race and stuff. I think that's something Deep Space Nine does so well, better than any other series. And I'm going to include The Next Generation.
Yeah.
That they get into not just religion but race. The Ferengi, the Klingon, the Cardassians, the Bajor. So they really do a great job of, hey, there's all these different races out there, and this is what each of them stands for. And they do a really great job really specifying that in each episode. Really, they just seem to do it. Did you have a favorite director for the series?
No, I think Star Trek was a pretty mechanized production. TV itself is pretty mechanized. And I generally get the impression that the goal of directors on television, for one thing, they have a lot of work to do in very little time. They don't spend time talking to the artists. There's not usually a lot of flash. They don't have time for it. So it's their job to kind of stay out of the way of the episode and just get the episode up and running. So I wish I could, cite one as a favorite. But if they did their job right, they kind of all look alike. But you might have a thought on that. What do you?
I really love LeVar Burton's directing episodes, and you could tell when he's directing because it's very fast paced, but it's not so fast you can't catch up with it, that it loses you, and it's very action packed. I'm not saying I just love the action episodes.
But LeVar was auditioning continuously to direct another Star Trek movie. He wanted to direct a Star Trek movie, and he was I think he was demonstrating that every chance he got.
And you could see that too with Deep Space Nine. When he directs an episode, it's fast, it's furious, but it's so entertaining, and it doesn't lose you either.
Yeah.
Like, I know he didn't necessarily write the episode, but the way he directs it to perfection.
Yeah. He's a smart guy. and a really, 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 really important figure in American entertainment who's getting a Lifetime Achievement Emmy.
Awesome.
Yeah, and if Mayim Bialik keeps at it, he's going to have a new job next year.
Did you have a favorite episode in the series?
Of DS9?
Yes.
Well, for one thing, let me tell you, we're at about an hour, and as I told you, I don't even think we've scratched the surface yet.
No, we haven't.
So just preliminarily, I will really urge you to make this more than just one.
Yes. This is part one.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to say about this show, and it has a hell of a lot in common with Dark Shadows.
Yes.
A hell of a lot in common. But favorite episode, like if I just had to watch. Okay, so now episode that's most fun to watch, episode that's most satisfying, or the episode that I think is the most historically important. Yeah.
I'll say most satisfying. We'll do that one.
Well, what we leave behind, final episode. Yeah. I mean, I don't think television has ever had a more satisfying final episode, except for maybe the last episode of MASH in its history. Yeah, it's a masterpiece of bringing together God knows how many different plots.
Yeah.
It somehow delivers exactly what you want, but it doesn't make you feel guilty for having wanted it or for them saying, okay, here you go. It has just the right DS9ian amount of pain and loss and ambiguity. It satisfies in the right proportion, and it leaves the right amount of stuff still waiting and wanting. So
I think it's, for TV series, it's always so hard to have the perfect ending, right? And I really think that's what Deep Space Nine leaves you with what you leave behind. And it really does its job. It brings the Dominion plot together. It finally concludes that. It wraps up Odo's plot, which he's going to join. He rejoins the Link, and by this time, him and Kara, I mean, they're a thing. They're a love interest, and you see all this sort of. For those who've watched it, or who haven't watched it, I'm not trying to spoil anything, but Avery Brooks's character, I mean, Cisco just running at Galdecott and tackle him in the flames. What a scene. I mean, it's like you expect Cisco to just rise to the occasion, and he always does,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's a really big, tragic, sweeping ending. I mean, he literally, ends by plunging into the fires of hell to defend the crown. And it's yeah. I mean, who doesn't? If you're gonna go out like that.
What did you think of Galdecott's heel turn?
Which one?
Well, the one where he joins the Dominion, we'll say.
He's an asshole. Yeah. I mean, they romanticize him in the fourth season.
Yeah.
In the fourth season, they really romanticize him. He's got the bird of prey. He's got Damar. He's fighting renegade Klingons. He's got the robe. He's got the Klingon robe with the different metals and all of that. And it's like, that's the closest they came to transforming him into a good guy. Yeah. And the fans loved it. And the writers were horrified. And they thought, oh, my God, what have we done? This guy is our Hitler, And suddenly Hitler's like a hip private eye, going around San Diego in a yellow Mustang. We can't have that. You can't have Hitler doing that. So So I think, yeah, it's perfect. I mean, he's mad, he's insane anyway, and he's power mad and megalomaniacal, and apparently has bad breath. And so, yeah, I was perfectly fine with that.
I think that here's a character, when you're introduced to him, you're not sure what to make. For me, I wasn't sure what to make of him right away. But I think once you sort of get to know the character, you sort of sense that, and I'm not saying they telegraphed this at all. I don't think they did. But for me, it's like, no offense, I don't hate the actor, but I can't root for this character. Like, if that makes sense. Like, I can't.
Yeah, it makes sense in the world.
Right. I can't. I get. I'm not saying they force fed him to try to be a good guy. I didn't get that feeling when they were trying to do that. It felt sort of like they were just trying something, and it didn't feel forced. But at the same time, it's just not somebody who I could root for. It's sort of.
You can.
To give a weird comparison. Every time wrestling tries to turn Sting heel, I can't boo Sting. So maybe it's the face paint, maybe, I don't know, but I can't boo Sting. So neither can the crowd.
Yeah. Joel, this has been fantastic, but I have to wrap it up. I have to give a friend of mine a ride, and it's pretty critical.
I am so sorry.
So my own runabout here, and bid you good night. When can we talk again about this? That's what I need to let me know.
How's next weekend looking, man? How's next Friday?
I don't know. You just froze.
How's next Friday? Sorry.
I don't know.
Okay.
Joel, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Hold on. Let me stop.
I think we may be in a